Blessed love and peace. Blessed love and peace. A brief thought. A thought brief. My classmates charge an hourly rate of over $5,000 US. I receive contributions and trades of less than $5,000 US per year. Annum. These joints are expensive, particularly because it's in English. Oh, the inflation for the translation into imperialation is staggeration. Here we go. Brief thought. It's this. It's compounded. Interested? No. Better. Here it is. Hollywood. Hollywood. Know there's money in the ghetto. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. Did. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. All right. Peace and blessings to the brethren from the Oak Town, the old city, the Bay, and the references of generations before that, the samples, examples, and otherwise. Hollywood, recognize this. It's interesting. This. Is anybody else talking about this? Is anybody else seeing this? How about this? This is the insight. Talk about evolution. Talk about evolution. Haha, beetle. I gotta go from housework mode. Yo, I still got my sleeves rolled up and everything. It is warm. Sweat on the brow. Hose in the head covering. Here's the very short of it. Here's the point of it. How about the point up front? OD. That sounds rather aggressive. Assertive. The point up front. Internet is the evolved Hollywood. That's the point up front. Now here's the banter. To return to the point, the banter is this. Think about 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, when the movies, the moving film, the moving photographs of this new technology, of photographs, of capturing imagery, not paintings, not portraits, not sketches. Actual photographs, poses, portraits, historic. That's about 150, 170 years ago, thereabouts. And then so within a span of 50 years, people conceived contraptions of continuation of these photographs. Motion pictures. I want to be in the movies, whatever that song is. So you want to be, something about want to be in the movies, name and lights, whatever else. Anyways, motion pictures. So it doesn't exist before that. There's like theater, Shakespeare. There's plays, local touring groups and things like that. But there's no such thing as motion pictures. Putting up a screen, having it, audience is an established thing from amphitheaters and further. But having like a seated theater and a screen and a light and showing actual imageries. How about that? Foolings and delusions of the mind, illusions of the mind. But the imagery, the photographs of other places around the world, what people never seen or even heard of before. And here it is, the seven wonders of the world, right on the screen, right there. It's not a drawing. It's the photograph. And now it's in motion. You can see people moving. Whoa! Surreal, mind blowing. Scary too, because indigenous know, yo, you're capturing the image, you're capturing the essence of our ancestors. That's sacred. No, don't do that. Don't take photographs. How about that? Even the civilizations know that, because you don't see too many photographs of Baha'u'llah or even imagery of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because there's similar knowledge about that. So anyways, it's not heated too tough by ourselves at this point today. And it's amazing. It is awe-inspiring. It is seen as miraculous, incroyable. And now here's the motion pictures right in your own city. Movie theaters, big screens. And then there's the industries, because now we get further sophisticated. So now that the motion pictures, people apply the theater, the actors in the stage theater, into motion pictures and make movies, actual stories, fantastic stories, even with special effects and stunt people. And additionally, whoa, that's amazing. Over 100 years ago, unprecedented. Ain't nothing new under the sun, but things are shown in new lights. How about that? So anyways, just imagining that, just like it's difficult to imagine a world even without mobile phones today. And I got gray hairs. I know what that's like. I know what most of my life is like without that. But today, like, imagine how difficult it is for other kinfolk, younger, the 7th generation of electricity, the 1st generation of the Black Buddha, who have very little clue of what life is like without Wi-Fi, without mobile phones and social media and rampant technology. Technology could be considered rampant 5,000 years ago too, so that's another thing. Putting a shovel into the ground could be considered rampant technology. Anyways, going back to the topic. Over 100 years ago, that's the scene. Going to a movie theater, seeing motion pictures, photographs, like shown in motion, amazing. And then all of a sudden, a whole nother level, adding sound to that. So now, and that changes the game too, because a lot of those actors who could do acting silently with the got to be further animistic or whatever, animated, potato, further animated in like the gestures and everything. But now it's like speaking. And now it's like, oh, like you got to be a fuller package. But anyways, it don't stop, because there's a big demand. People want to see it. It's big money to be made, to the point where eventually, just 100 years ago, the whole Hollywood industry is established. It was like remnants to a certain point, but then about 100 years ago at this point, maybe a little bit after 100 years ago, it started getting built. Serious studios to like belt out product. Product, exactly, like slanging on the streets, product. People get you don't like getting high from heroin or opium or Coca-Cola. Here's some Hollywood. Here's the newest Hollywood for you. Need your escape, need your forgetting about life. Here's new Hollywood for you. And to the point, obviously, how big that becomes. And normalized and everything else. That's not the point of this, though, because we become aware of like the challenges of Hollywood as well, the corruptions, the manipulations, the formulaicness, the deceitfulness, the rewritings of history and the misleadings and the pedophile and the cannibalism and the cultism and everything else like that. But at the same time, amidst all of that, how significantly influential, even beyond the government leaders. The government leaders come from Hollywood, literally. Ronald Reagan, to become the most powerful people of the world, quote unquote. That's how established Hollywood is, and it's that way in the 50s and 60s, 70 years ago. Particularly 60 years ago thereabouts. Um, and it just becomes like multifold, multinational corporation fold. Um, so their heydays, their ebbs and flows. There's like there's the glamour and all the mechanics of how it works, and there's a huge migration, particularly in the last 50 years, because Hollywood becomes so influential in culture itself, in the culture of over 200, 300 million people of this continent and around the world, where people like to find, because, and again, it's not just, it does not just the films now, it's not just the movies at the theater, the big screen, it's the small screen to the TV. um, because people get their sense of life, their sense of purpose, their sense of identity, and culture from watching the screen. And so Hollywood becomes an intuitive, a subliminal, a subconscious pilgrim pilgrimage, a pilgrim site, Mecca for American culture. It just like, this is where I know Ward Cleaver is, or where Michael Brady is, or where Heathcliff Huxtable is, or New York. If you want to go to and migrate to New York, though many do, but if you want to, California, that's the place you want to be. Uh, Beverly Hillbillies, Beverly Hills. Come on, let's get that song. Sit down, let me tell you about a man named Jed. A man so poor, hardly kept his family fed. And up one day, while he's shooting for some food, up from the ground came a bubbling crude oil, that is, Texas tea, black gold. Old friend said, Jed need to move away from there. Da 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 da. Said, California is the place you want to be. So he packed up the truck and he moved to Beverly Hills, that is. Da 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 da. Anyways, that's people's life. That was 60 years ago. That song, that TV show. But that shows the not even just the ethos, but the longing, subliminal. How many people moved to California in the past 2-3 generations, just because they're dismayed with their life at the moment, and they just perceive California, the climate being further acclimatable, acclimating, and then again, it's just like that mystique. This is where it is. How many people want to be an actor and leave everything from wherever they're from to be an actor in Hollywood? And then how many fall from that or leave from there and then just kind of settle with wherever they're at in life at that point? So anyways, just understanding like how huge and everything else Hollywood is, again, in American culture, and then with America becoming increasingly influent in the past 70 years or so in the world culture. So, and in the mechanics, and the middle point of this, or the midpoint of this, is talking about the mechanics of Hollywood, how it works. So we know there's the studios, the big corporations, the big money things that can do all different types of stuff, not just in the industry, but in life, in the world. We can talk about the conspiracy joints and any different groups that have wield power and influence within Hollywood, whether it's Jewish, whether it's cultish, whether it's white supremacists, or whether it's whatever. That's an element. We can talk about, we can talk about the propaganda. We can talk about the agenda, the intrinsic racism and classism, xenophobia, and additionally, that's not the mechanics though. That's the characteristic. Mechanics: studio, actors, writers. Let's look at those. That's four elements, four participants in the industry. We talk about studios, and we're talking about studios, talking about like the people who organize everything, because there's a whole lot that goes in. There's a huge barrier to entry to be in the industry in Hollywood, to get things done. Studios, huge money. Just a film set for like a 10-15 minute film, a short film, a film set, the crew, pre-production, post-production, extras, insurance, everything. It's, with so much that planning, everything else that goes into making a film, it's ridiculous, and it takes a lot, which is why there are studios that do this work. And again, big barrier to entry. So that the studios, when we're talking about that, we're talking about like all the things that go behind, all the behind the scenes joints that put a film together. So that's one collective element, participant in it. The other one is the actors, the people who you see, the people who you fall in love with, who we fall in love with, who have the charisma and everything else like that. But very often are basically just a shell because they're speaking somebody else's words, and that's very reductionist and everything. But very often, it's like just facts. I mean, kinfolk are playing a role. That's facts, and kinfolk bring their own life experience, particularly those who have charisma and additionally natural charisma, put in a lot of work to memorize the lines and everything else like that. But when I'm speaking to in terms of like that's a very harsh word, but shall ain't no offense, peace and blessings to all actors and actresses. But what I'm saying is that people might see an actor or actress and oh they're beautiful, amazing, and then like see some of the roles they play, and like they listen to the lines, the script, and they see the characters that the actors are playing, and they equate the actors to the characters, and expect the actors to be like the characters. And in many ways, the actors are because the actors have to bring that. But in many ways, the actors are not, and people can be very disappointed when they find their actors behaving or believing in a way that is different from those characters. Now, again, a lot of actors, like again, there has to be a natural connection and everything else like that. But anyways, I'm just gonna just leave it at that before I get further tangled up in my words. So that's the first category: studios and all the behind the scenes. The second one is the actors. The third one is what I just referenced: the writers, the ones who have the imagination, the ones who have the cleverness, the ones who look like Quasimodo, blah, blah, because they're the ones who sat back at the back of class, the geniuses who were quiet, were picked on and bullied, didn't get caught up in all the love affairs and triangles and hates and everything, rivalries and everything, and just kept notes and dreamed about like ulterior versions of life. And think about jokes and everything, have their secret kind of groups and kind of jokes and everything and cultures and brilliance, and become the writers. And again, I'm being stereotypical in the description, maybe a little bit hyperbolic. But the point is that the writers are the ones who craft the imagination, who craft the presentation, who think about the stories and the ideas and the plot twists, and the surprise endings that just amaze people, the storylines that people fall in love with, the characters themselves that people fall in love with, and many of the further prominent writers become further influential within the mechanics of how movies get produced. Some of the writers become directors, and directors can be considered another element. Many people are writer-directors. But anyways, the writers are a particular participant within the scenario. That's numero tres. And then the fourth category that I'm describing at the moment is the audience. Haha, surprise, surprise, the fourth wall. So that's the joint. So those are like four basic elements. Obviously, there's so many others, but for the moment, we're just talking about those four. Speaking fast and everything, because it's about to be Shabbat. Juma Mubarak as well. Did not offer Salat today. Believe it or not, I'm walking in pain. How about that? And it's not serious pain, but it's like right there. And just in the past year, when offering Salat, back. And it's a recognition that it's a manifestation of the wrestlings that are going on, the warfare that goes on, stress manifesting itself amidst the chakras, root, that is. So, didn't offer it today. I'm sitting here. Actually, this is not the best posture, and this is not the best seat to be sitting in. This is not the best thing to be doing, to be honest. But I know, serious at the moment, me bending down, it's susceptible. So I got put out for a couple weeks just this past year, about the same time, because we're entering stress zone at this moment. In addition to just going through my birthday, I'm 50 years old. J'ai 5 ans. What percentage of the entire population of living beings on this earth, particularly humanoids, are in that category? Yeah, and that's not braggadocious, because I still endeavor to be married with sistren who are from the younger category. So, hey, ain't no accomplishment necessarily on this side. So we do have things to share and things to teach and things to learn still, continuing on. Um, those are four components. So I say all this because, particularly in the past couple of generations, the means of making films become increasingly accessible. The equipment, the filming equipment, cameras, become further accessible. So the whole independent filmmaking scene, and additionally, becomes further accessible. It becomes further marketable. Many independent films in the 80s, 90s, 2000s become huge box office sensations. And so there's not necessarily parity, or not nearly parity, within the industry. However, there are opportunities and there are options aside from just selling out to the industry and playing the role. The Hollywood Shuffle. Big up, peace and blessings to Robert Townsend. So, if you listen long enough, you're going to hear I repeat references. How about that? I'm not going to play my name though. Adi, okay. So, independent films. There becomes an independent film scene that like studios buy into. Studios finance and invest within and recruit from. Sundance and everything else like that. The Sundance Film Festival. Sundance is a sacred dance from Native tradition. So anyway, it's difficult. The co-option is challenging, and it's embedded too. So that's part of the challenge. Sweat. Interesting thing. This side note. How about this side note? Observation. The temperature seems to get warmer amidst the 2 times of the day, particularly the second. 2 times of the day I'm talking about is the smile beginning and the smile concluding. And what is observed, or what is presumed, or what is hypothesized is that amidst the smile concluding, particularly, the temperature actually increasing when logically it should be reducing, because the soleil is at a further awkward or distant angle from the midday soleil. So it should be cooler, particularly from just a few moments ago. But what is observed as I begin sweating at this moment, so that tells me Shabbat, yeah. It's this: as the soleil does, the light from the soleil does relent somewhat from the day, the moisture accumulates above where the clouds are, and thus keeps in the heat further than when the sunlight, the soleil light, burns the mists of the atmosphere, and thus the heat continues up. Just like in winters, we know here in Ohio, when it's a cloudy day, it's warmer. When it's a clear sky, all things being equal, it's colder. We know that very well, living here for a long time. Anyways, continuing back with the story, 4 components. Each one has a significant role in inner workings. I talk about the independent industry, and how increasingly influential it becomes, but then also how it gets, I won't say infiltrated, but the studios reach into the independent scene as well. My point for this all is like to pause for a second and just like, if anybody has those reminiscence capabilities right now of just like imagining what the 90s feel like, remembering what the 90s feel like in terms of like just like the world beginning to get together, like people being able to travel like in a common way, stories being told directly between communities. This is like before the internet, and just as the internet is getting started, the culture of that, and then how big films are during that time, how promising and hopeful independent films are at the time. Black films, black independent films, building from Spike Lee, Robert Townsend, brethren from LA, John Singleton, um, O'Shea Jackson. Not all of those are independent films, um, but it's that culture of yo, this is available. It can be done. We have connections, and this and the other. Is that like on the cusp of like after for so many years and generations and decades, particularly in the 80s and 90s, of talking about lack of representation and this and the other. Like in the 90s, right after like the 80s into the 90s, again, Spike Lee doing this thing and everything else, like it's on the cusp. Cable television is becoming increasingly accessible. Again, the barriers are fewer. More further and further people have video cameras and can shoot 9 millimeter film and before digital age, but just like quality films, and put things together themselves and tell stories. And then we have the uh, exploitation film scene and whatever else, and a lot of just the culture is exploitation culture at this point. Anyways, we're at the cusp, like 30 years ago, of like the things that people yearn for, at least in terms of culture experiences, media, culture, media. When the internet comes, it changes the game. And at first, like only so many people are paying attention to it, and only so many people are knowledgeable about it, only so many people are proficient in it. So people are still doing what people do, going to the films, watching TV, a little bit hating on the new thing or whatever else, suspicious, and but eventually, yo, can't deny it, it's happening. Um, and what we experienced in the 90s in terms of connectivity, community, then in the 2000s, there's the original YouTube, the original Google videos, the original current TV, what the original direct communication between each other, and the original community building from those things, with campaigns like One Man, and free hug campaigns, and things like that, where people weren't trying to monetize immediately, where people weren't even thinking about monetizing actually. Too tough. Facebook. Um, there's a longer term kind of mindfulness, not necessarily for the benevolent or whatever, but there's still just a mindfulness of like still, even if it's a libertarian kind of rebellion kind of thing, it's still like, yeah, we're not trying to just like sell out or whatever. Eventually, the imperialist conventions become further entrenched within the proficient methodologies of the internet communication. All that being said, what I go back to the first point is this: internet being the Hollywood. So whereby 100 years ago, where all of a sudden there are these motion pictures, and the motion pictures have sound. The internet is like, whoa, you can live stream with somebody who is in Taipei at this moment, and have a Zoom or whatever else. So the point of that is to say this: those same four components are increasingly evident in the internet culture. So, and it's actually misleading for old heads or older heads like myself, because when we first experienced the internet, again, I still have one of the reasons why I'm still doing these things is because 20 years ago, maybe 18 years ago, essentially 20 years ago, I started doing these things. I start posting on YouTube. I start posting on Google Video before it merges back into YouTube. Can't post on your current TV because it's not accessible. You got to be green lighted. But that's when this begins, and there are other people who do it, and there's responsiveness, reaching out, and there's affirmation of those efforts. And now, old school people like myself, there's like this involuntary loyalty of just like staying with the something, so we stay with this. But what we observe is that the culture is very different than it was 20 years ago, and it's not. It's natural. This is the way it happens. But it's a matter of recognizing that it's not, and this is, I'm saying this because people like myself have to, it's beneficial for people like myself to recognize this. It's not the direct communication kind of situation that is initially perceived in the early stages 20 years ago or 30 years ago when the internet begins, of emails, this and the other. It is Hollywood. It is internet is Hollywood at this moment. Um, and the four components are at work. There are the studios that have the big capacities of presenting, whether that's actual social media platforms, whether that's email services, and all the surveillance and sabotage and everything else like that. Um, that's involved with that. Um, that's the studios, big infrastructure, all the storage units or whatever that hold the gigs and everything else for all the posts and everything. Huge costs, huge infrastructure. Those are the studios. Then there are the actors, which who are called influencers now, presenters or otherwise. Um, and that would be myself. How about that? Um, I'm not the most popular. However, that's the people who are participating on the internet. People are the actors. And then there are the writers, and that's what we're observing, particularly at this moment. 20 years into the game or whatever, 30 years into the game actually. And I'm talking about the internet being 30 years in the game. Tough. The internet's been around for longer than that, but in terms of a popular common experience. What I'm talking about is that the writers. What I'm talking about is people who are crafting economic ventures that feature presenters, influencers, or otherwise, just like people script um, films. And additionally, now the product is this, and it's the actuality experience, the authenticity. There's always the charisma, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll situation, the excesses, and otherwise. But just to recognize that the films today, the product that's being pushed, is people's own presentations, and how there are studios and writers that are organizing, that are sophisticated. The nature of the game itself is now further levels, because analytics and science and everything else, they're trying to figure out what's influential, and figure out how to and where to direct people's behavior and thoughts, even simply to distraction and non-productiveness and irrelevance. Am I self-afflicting? Hold up. So those are the mechanics, and then audience are difficult to say. Anybody is actually, to be honest, there is no entity that's just exclusively an audience. Everybody is an actor. All the world's a stage, and all the participants are actors, because um, even one's viewing pattern is being observed and influenced, and influencing the decisions that are being made about scripts. And additionally, and so even when people are not presenting their faces and everything, if it's not categorized as being an actor, then they're effectively playing a writing role in the industry. Everybody who participates in the internet is involved in the industry. There's no like that fourth wall done bounced. So anyways, that's one of the considerations. And just figuring it out. There continues to be that independent scene, um, and I mean, for each of us, we have to identify what we believe is purpose within this. Um, and for those of us who are inclined towards peace, prosperity, cooperation between peoples, then that involves ethics and appropriate ways of behaving with each other, um, ethical, appropriate ways of accessing the industry, what platforms we utilize, because we are propping up the industry, the studios, accordingly, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. That's facts. And so it's beneficial for us to recognize that because the hiding places are only imaginary. Um, the way things are these days, knowledge is had. So it's further prudent for us to do our best in being honest and compassionate and modest in interacting with each other. And also, that helps, we observe, in terms of um, optimizing our experience of communication, presumably. Um, so, anyways, there's that. Um, Another thing in the compounded nature of this presentation, and we're going to have to end soon because the shadows are getting longer. Um, yes, we send a correspondence to our LGBTQ kinfolk here in the Cuyahoga area with a solemn solicitation to remove the rainbow swastikas from the areas, the public areas, particularly those immediately around uh, schools and parks. Uh, we receive a number of emails. One of the emails communicates a warning of hostility about likening the LGBTQ to Nazis, um, and warning us about the retaliation from the LGBT community. Ha ha, that sounds like Gestapo type response. Rather interesting, that. Not too pleasant, but hey, it is what it is. Um, the actuality is, first of all, we didn't say anything about Nazis. We said swastika. How about that? Facts. And that's exactly what it is. Rainbow swastika. And I'm not going to get into the details of that at the moment because of time at the moment. I don't like when people say, do the research. I hear young people say that particularly. Yo, if you want to be a teacher, be a teacher. Don't just flex and impose, but teach. So the short of it is, a swastika is a holy, sacred, ancient symbol from India that has, it's a multifold involved teaching and guidance, one of which it basically guides individuals to along a righteous path into the experience of nirvana, and that's represented through the very simple imagery of the swastika. The Nazis took the swastika and utilized it for malevolent purposes, or what may be considered as malevolent purposes, Holocaust and otherwise. Similarly, with the rainbow swastika, the rainbow is a sacred holy symbol within the tradition of Israel. It represents a returning onto relationship with God, Elohim, from corruption, hedonism, selfishness, greed, hatred, and delusion, back into the respect and the relationship between oneself and the ultimate Most High One, and harmony and reconciliation accordingly, and the rainbow being a symbol of that peace and prosperity after going through nasty trials and tribulations. And so it's beneficial to recognize that and recognize what's being done when the rainbow swastika is utilized to express sodomy, which is exactly what precipitates the trials and tribulations that people go through before returning into oneness with God. So it's an existential journey that LGBTQ kinfolk are on, whether kinfolk want to recognize that or otherwise. And it's the reason, essentially, why kinfolk utilize that symbol. It's not just a matter of it's pretty and children like it, and it's easier for pedophiles to get close. There are other further reasons that help it endure since whenever it starts, the 70s or whatever that was. We could talk about the Yellow Brick Road or otherwise, from Wizard of Oz in the 50s. And the whole notion of color TV in media, representing the perception of transcendence from the binaries that preceded in the pre-World War II era of the United States American culture. However, that being said, that's what it is, and that's where we're at, and that's what's up. One other thing that I think of at the moment before wrapping this joint is black folk, white folk. Black folk, white folk. There's some song with that. Anyway, um, oh, one other thing about LGBTQ. Actually, it is, and we didn't say Nazis. We didn't say anything about Nazis when our thing. That's what was said to us. But that's telling, on the part of the side that advocates for LGBTQ. Not only that, but in actuality, we didn't say it, but it is. I mean, we did not say it either. And we don't hide from it either. We're careful of how we communicate. Actually, believe it or not, Ripley. However, uh, uh, we do recognize, we do observe, not just the similarity, but the continuity. And we can talk about the similarity between the Nazis of Deutschland of 100 years ago, thereabouts. And we can talk about the LGBTQ Nazis of today. The methodologies are somewhat different in terms of one being a very fast, one generation methodology of annihilation, Holocaust, and another being an attachment to an established methodology of imperialism that's facilitating an apartheid that's causing its own Holocaust in a slower, passive aggressive way. And it may be considered that there are actually further people who have been killed and tortured and raped um, and done dirty during the reign of LGBTQ style Nazism than from Deutschland. It's not a comparison, but it's just a matter of recognizing what the actuality of today is. One way of describing the distinction of the two methodologies is that the one from Deutschland is a blitzkrieg type Nazism, whereas the contemporary experience from the LGBTQ community is a punk coward type Nazism that feigns the role of victimization, makes provocations towards people to respond with hostilities, and then accuses people of being hostile and points to that as examples, and then solicits either cancellation or other types of severe actions towards people. And then even since it attaches itself so much to the imperialism, the established imperialism of the United States, particularly here, waving flags on city halls and additionally putting signs and everything else, insignias in public spaces, it attaches itself very much exactly to the imperialism of the United States. And in that sense, it's just a continuation of the imperialism that precipitates the Second World War, and that, I mean, just functions as the precipitator of bad things in civilization generally around the world. So one way of contextualizing that, of compartmentalizing it, is this: to recognize that the further powerful like force or phenomenon is just imperialism. Well, I mean, we're reverting to kind of like an ism kind of thing, ism trope, but I mean, we can recognize that it's just the primordial experience of greed, hatred, delusion, selfishness, all that. That's the higher earthly kind of power. Then with as a subsidiary of that, and kind of attached to that, is science, and recognize how science is utilized for very hellacious purposes over the past 2 centuries, since the beginning of science, because science is just a thing, and it's how people utilize it, and it's those who have the imperialistic influences and impositions that utilize, influence, invest, and manipulate science for very malevolent purposes. And so recognizing that science is around the world. It's not exclusive to European civilization. It's not exclusive to LGBTQ or anything else. But it's like the second tier level of the afflictions that people are experiencing. All the people who are talking about climate change, all the people of science, scientists and secularists and humanists and everybody else who talks about climate change, it's science that's responsible. So to quote and refer to science as like the authority to talk about climate change is just like, that's like referring to the rapist and the studies that rapists do about rape. And that's heinous, nasty, Metaphor, it's not a metaphor. That's what's happening. So that's how illogical and asinine it is to have that conversation. And that's hard language, but it's if anything is asinine, then that's facts. So don't take issue with me. Take issue with the word. That being said, science is there. Science is neither bad or whatever. It's how it's utilized, and because it's so susceptible to the malutilization from the imperialism, it's atomic bombs, chemical warfare, biological warfare, uh, experimentations on humans, de-sterilization, blah 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 blah. And how many things are learned from that? What the Nazis are doing 100 years ago through science, through the scientific methodology, the studies, the findings, the conclusions, the innovations, and additionally that were gleaned from torturing people, killing people, let alone killing animals and nasty up the plant life. And additionally, how many corporations live today from those things? So that's, again, like the Nazis were the third tier. The Nazis were just a mechanism for employing these things. And actually, we can talk about where the Republic fits in with that, where academia fits in with that, how academia ascends in that process of the ascension of science. And additionally, but in terms of the power structure, Nazism is like right here. And that's not negating anything Nazis do. Obviously, that's heinous, nasty bullshit. But to recognize where it exists, because if we truly want to prevent that, to stop it from happening now and to prevent it from happening in the future, we have to recognize the honesty and truth about how and what happens and how it happens, why it happens, who it happens, whatever, all that. Nazism is only right here. It's science. It's the Republic that divorces people from their experience of family. Individualism itself is imperialism. How about that? Individualism is imperialism. It's about relationship. That's life. Relationship. Respect. That's the solution. So many people are clutching on to individualism as a solution for getting over imperialism. So, Nazism was only here. Science is the huge methodology for wielding power. And that's done just by the primordial experience and phenomena of greed, hatred, and delusion that we can refer to as imperialism. Beyond the conspiracy theorists and cults and everything else like that, it all fits into there. But just the primordial, what comes from everybody's own heart in this life, that's what fuels the imperialism. And then science is utilized to get at each other accordingly. And then Nazism and everything like that is a pretense of trying to like get up on that science. And so the Nazis were hustling to get an atomic bomb, just like the United States is hustling to get an atomic bomb during that time through science. Like the engineers, Einstein and additionally, who come from Central Europe from that time, have to pick and choose where we're going to go in this warfare. Whose ship we're going to latch on to? Who's going to be the victor? Because it doesn't matter, because the powers that are wielding the devastation are all right. I'm getting a little bit caught up in that, but the point the point the point the Nazis are only a tool, and it's nasty, it's huge, it's societal, it's huge. But to recognize it's not the epitome, it's not the origin. It has to take from the swastika. It has to take from the pains of World War I. It has to take from all these other things in order to assert itself. And even then, it has to hustle in trying to get itself into the science sphere, engineering the first jet engine planes, the best tanks, the best explosives, bombs, missiles. And additionally, it's all science. That is all science. So, and again, it's not just like, well, yeah, but we're doing medicine. No, it's all part of it. It's all part of it. And when people talk about STEM, not hating, mathematics is awesome and beautiful and miraculous. Engineering is awesome, beautiful, and miraculous. What does the T stand for? Science, is it technology, engineering, mathematics? It's there's amazing things that happen, and the mathematics are actually um, um, perhaps further pure than maybe engineering and how the mathematics are applied. However, when all of those are what's being promoted without question, because it's recognized of all the earthly benefits that are gleaned when people study that, and it has to be the masses too. It can't just be an elite group because it requires a collective concentration and a collective value, which is why it's so hyped and propagandized at the moment. And but at the same time, when that's what's emphasized at the cost of letters, oh, am I biased because that's where all my degrees are? Kind of, sort of. Um, but how much do I rely upon my degrees? I don't know. Relationships. But when that mentality is what is emphasized, the mathematic mentality alone, that's memorization. It's calculation. It's other than life experience. It's other dealing with irrational numbers, and irrational experiences, and knowing how to govern and get outside the classroom and get along with somebody who speaks a different language. COBOL, the class I failed in undergrad. Um, I don't mean that with I don't mean that immodestly, because that was a very critical thing from amidst my process of graduation. But hey, whatever. I don't have a job today that relies upon a BA degree per se. So there's less motivation for people to try to take it away. Hooray! Let's continue on. The smile is dipping. The smile is dipping. So, and the sweat is dripping. Anyway, um, continuing on. So just recognizing that science is being utilized for very malevolent things, and you can cite positive things here and positive things there. Come on, let's be honest. And when that culture is what is so promoted, particularly as a way of escape or of getting out of the class apartheid, for quote unquote, I'm not even going to say the word, for subjugated peoples. It's another form of it's oppression, and it's enslavement. So, anyways, that being recognized, the isms, the political mechanisms that are utilized as a pretense for organizing and actually doing whatever dirt work or whatever else is involved, that's even lower than what science is. So that's where LGBTQ is at this moment. And instead of the Blitzkrieg style Nazism of 100 years ago in Deutschland, it is the punk coward Nazism of feigned victimization, genius, brilliant, intelligent knowledge about how society works, having information on different peoples, and being able to manipulate and extort and do all type of dirty business, that's what it is, on others. That's the Gestapo tactics of the punk coward Nazism. And that's what it is. So, it's a matter of recognizing that. And there can be reactionary accusations towards myself, because that's what it is, avoidance and clouding the actualities. But when things are flown without consent of the general public, and with indifference, and people are told when saying something about it, why do you have a problem with it? You should be able to get along with it. Why? And there's this accusatory thing. It's a totalitarianism. It's LGBTQ totalitarianism, plain and simple. So it's done in a different stilo, but it's the same thing. So that's what we speak to, and we welcome kinfolk to respond and reason in a respectful way, in an honest way. What we observe when kinfolk try to reason with us, they see like what we're coming from. They don't have the mechanisms to call us out and to do cross accusations towards us, because they think, oh, he must be black. Okay, then we'll do some RBG type stuff. That don't work because we ain't on that. And then when we call out citizenship, oh, wait a minute, we like the citizenship. We like all our attachments to the academia and to the power structure. Oh no, let's not talk about that. There's less to stand on at that point. The whole victimization trope is gone. All the victims done, gone. That's it, plain and simple. And meanwhile, in that whole conversation, people aren't talking about Native women being abducted and killed at catastrophic levels. People aren't talking about not being able to drink the water. Here's another thought for the day. There will be a day. There is a day. People will see a day when water has a greater value in society than gold. When people see water and value fresh water greater than gold, when the markets reflect a greater valuation for water, fresh water, than for gold. And there are basically two scenarios in that situation. One is drastic, where things are annihilated and there's hardly any water, any clean water at least. So people are fiending, like Waterworld, ironically, for fresh water. And I don't care about that gold. It's a desert, yo. What you need that gold for? It's dehydration, where water is valued. That's one scenario. The other scenario is when kinfolk actually wake the fuck up and stop polluting all this shit and respect nature, Inamaka, Mother Earth, and recognize the fresh water drops on us regularly. We just had it today. That's where the thought is shared from. The fresh water, the fresh rain waters drop on us today. Like better than gold, fresh water. And what happens? It hits the ground and gets polluted. People can't drink it. It's got to be processed. It's going to be bottled. And it's going to be sold. Haha. Maybe that's what it is. Bottled water having a greater market value than an ounce of gold. Witty wada. We only have ourselves to blame. Like I say, the whole primordial phenomena of imperialism is within our own hearts, or within our own greed, hatred, and delusion, our distrust, and our abuses towards ourselves, each other. So anyways, la-di-da. That's some of the circumstances of today. I'm not going to talk about all the things that LGBTQ does anyway, without making the statement of solemnly soliciting the removal of rainbow swastikas. What's so bad about peace, love, and understanding? Facts. How many facts we gonna get today? Oh, the facsimile machine is on tilt. Let it cook. That being said, the final joint that we have to share, because the shadows are on tilt too now. The final joint for the moment is this. Black folk, white folk. That's what I was talking about. Black folk, white folk. What we're saying is this. Black folk, white folk. Oh, wada. How much? Oh. How about that? Okay, we got enough storage. That would be pretty. There's the other thing too. Oh, how about this? Oh, wait a minute. Pause up straight. Rewind just a bit. On that joint about the screen and the actors and the charisma and everything else. Like, here's a consideration. If you see, if a boy sees a pretty girl, and the pretty girl smiles and talks friendly to him and flirts with him, but the whole time she has no intention of marrying him, of being in a relationship with him or anything else. She's just flirting with him. Is that being a tease? And if it is categorized, if she does it to the extent of being classified as a tease, is that mean? Is that mean? I mean, he has to be his own man. He has to take responsibility for himself at the same time. But come on, women can be mean. It is a thing. So is that mean? For when a woman teases a man, and we'll talk about woman man at this point. A woman teases a man. If a pretty woman teases a man, she knows that he likes her, and she's gonna flirt with him because maybe she wants attention, maybe she wants validation, maybe she wants some jealousy from somebody else that she has further interest in, or whatever it is. But she flirts with him, gives him some sense of hope and promise of possibility of honorable relationship, marriage, but she has no intentionality. Now, it so happens that, things can happen a certain way. He might have game that she was not expecting. All of a sudden he says something and she's like, "Udi, what up?" And it happens beyond what her expectations and intentionalities are. Let him tell it. The ego. But meanwhile, outside of that situation, is she being mean when she teases? Is she being mean when she's flirting without the intention, or the ear itching, without the intention of being in a relationship with him? Intentionally talking with him and flirting, leading on his hopes without the intention of a relationship. Is she mean for that? Okay, let's say she is. For those who want to argue otherwise, okay, see you in a minute, maybe. Peace and blessings. But those who recognize, okay, yeah, that's kind of mean. Fine, thank you for my validation. Anyway, second question. If she's being mean, what if she doesn't have a conversation with her? What if she just dresses in a nice way, with the intention of getting attention? Similar, maybe not as mean, but is it still mean? That's when we talk about modesty, and that's when we talk about the importance of modesty, and that's where we talk about the protocols and culture of modesty, because of recognizing how influential the beauty of woman is. She don't even got to say nothing, particularly when she don't say nothing. Oh, the ma. Not done yet. Still getting to the point of this side note before black and white. It's this. If we recognize a woman flirting with a man, because again, women, be honest, women not saying anything, the flirt can be much further powerful, often is much further powerful when she doesn't say anything to him, when she just is a hint, a waft of fragrance or something else, a glance or otherwise, a smile. She can't help it. She's beautiful. She's awesome anyways, but particularly when she intends it, and she intends the flirtation of the smile, but she doesn't intend the relationship. Is that mean? Now, all that being said, here we go with the point. The point is this. If we're able to recognize some semblance of truth within that consideration, here's this joint. When a woman presents herself on YouTube, social media, and additionally, thirst trapping is an obvious situation, obvious scenario, but even like the congenial YouTubers or whatever else, who are very friendly, a woman who's very friendly, and additionally, am I just confessing myself or whatever else? Everything is everything. So we got caught up in doing stuff now. All right. This is my point. When a pretty woman is on the screen, she is mean. That's the point of it. I'll get to the point. That's what I'm saying. A pretty woman on a screen is mean. Why? Because when she is on a screen, she is flirting. When she is on a screen, she is presenting herself and displaying her beauty, imposing her powers, and that's not hyperbole. Literally, she's imposing her powers. She's wielding her powers. A man driving his whip and bumping his ride, showing his masculinity. That's a woman just smiling, pretty as she can be. Not even as pretty as she can be, just pretty, whatever she is. She's flirting. She's flexing in a primordial, beautiful way, and making brethren feel some kind of way, and having no intention of marrying all the brethren that see her image on the screen. And therefore, because of that, she mean for that. Don't hate her for that, but just recognize, particularly brethren, because of getting over the ego and recognizing how much a woman does influence us in that respect, and sharing that for women to recognize what women do, so that women can be mindful, and avoid all the unwanted, unsolicited responses. And additionally, because that's part of the effect, that's part of the consequence. It's not justified. It's not excusable or whatever else, but it's just that's the nature of it. So um, that's the point. A pretty squirrel. How about that? A pretty girl on the screen is me. That's all I'm saying. Now that's not all she is. She's a divine. Blah blah blah. Stop. Rewind. Playback. She is a holy child of God, a holy daughter of God, the Most High. Just like everyone is a child of God, the Most High. So respect and appreciation all around. Um, we're talking about behavior, and behavior has effects. Um, I'm discerning the appropriate pronunciation of the letter E as I'm studying the Svensk language. I'm also discerning the appropriate distinction between the English spelling of affect and effect. Blah, blah. Anyways, um, it's not the end of the day. We're just saying. That's what it is. Black and white. Black folk, white folk. White folk, black folk. Basic joint is this of the joint here is this: to recognize that um, body supremacy, physical supremacy, is not does not equate to being supreme or being. I'll put it this way: being bodily superior does not equate to being superior. How about that? Being completely or totally, comprehensively superior, and being mentally superior does not equate to being superior, completely, fully, comprehensively superior. And yo, get beyond that, because there are a lot of kinfolk who, in this culture, is very much entrenched within this notion of the mind supremacy kind of situation. And kinfolk can get into other people's heads, telepathic, figure people out, strategize and influence and be subliminal and everything else like that. Or they all these scratches and everything else like that. The fact of the matter is that the complete being is beyond just body and mind. There's heart and spirit, at the very least, four components. The Beatitudes from Jesus teaches us this. It's reinforced through other methodologies and teachings as well. But at least four: body, mind, heart, and spirit. If somebody is superior bodily, young, strong, muscle, and everything else like that, that's not fully superior. There's limitations. Everywhere, every way in which we feel some type of advantage over somebody else, we're disadvantaged, and we're vulnerable in all these other ways. Same thing with the mind. We can figure things out all around and everything else like that. So we think, haha, we are vulnerable in other ways as well. And so just being able to figure somebody out or otherwise, their further vulnerabilities and susceptibilities. And that's very beneficial for kinfolk who are very mindful, because that's very pervasive within this culture, within young people today in academia and otherwise. Because one of those susceptibilities and vulnerabilities is the necessity of being even further influential and valued for that accordingly. And what we are observing at the moment is that the brain is not enough for those purposes, and thus people are getting attached to artificial intelligence, AICA, and being replaced so that become just a shell. Hold on, do we get back to that thing again? A shell that loses body, that loses heart, that loses soul, spirit, for the sake of mind meld in the technology methodologies. Um, and that's not superior. You know that. The question is how to get out of it. Natural, gradual, optimal, day by day. In the way. Nature. Holla. Let's talk. Respectfully. It's very difficult because many people who speak the English language have just this indoctrinated culture and mindset of just talking down to me. And yeah, I can't stand it, y'all. And it's not a matter of like just impatience. It's just like literally like it's unacceptable, and not just for myself, but just for themselves and everybody else around. Because that's what we're talking about. Mind supremacy. Kinfolk can think way faster than I can. Beautiful, awesome. Where is that taking you? Was that Brad Pitt's line, Fight Club? How's that working out for you? Fantastic. But at the same time, recognize you got limits. Even that brain got limits. And the clouds have needs on Earth. The clouds have needs on Earth. And the earth has needs in clouds as well. It's yo, well, thank you very much. Listen to us what we've been saying since birth and before, since creation. So okay, fine. Playing the whole antithesis game. Congratulations, Lee Air. Ni hao. Bienvenue. All right, we gotta go because it's Shabbat. Ju Mubarak, Shabbat Shalom. It's been a minute since I look at the calendar, how spiritual I am, but I'm rather confident we're in the midst of Paryushan as well. I'm confessing my status at this point. So, ooh, that's nice to remember as well. I wasn't eating today, on camera at least. Beady body, beady body, beady body, beady body. Was I? No. Yeah, not today. Not at this recording, at least. So, the evidence, other than just my admission at this moment. Honesty is the best policy. It requires no defense. Those who hold it are not invincible. Ain't no guarantees. All thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim. Blessed love and peace and Rastafari.